Hello, my name is David Burnite. Let's talk about planting bulbs in your garden. Bulbs are the easiest and least worrisome thing that you can do to have a beautiful garden without anxiety. Given a little water and they'll come up almost anywhere they're planted, in sun or in shade. Some will even come up between cracks in the pavement, and they will grow in little rock gardens. There's almost nothing you can do except put too much water on them to keep a bulb from growing. And if you choose varieties carefully, you can have blooms in the early spring all the way through to summer, and you'll have lots of colors. Strictly speaking, daffodils, narcissus, tulips, lilies, and hyacinths are the main flowers which a botanist would say actually grow from bulbs. And onions and garlic, they also have flowers. If you cut a bulb in half, you'll see that it has layers, which are leaves getting ready to sprout, and inside is a tiny bud ready to come up. There are other flowers which grow from lumps, which you plant in the ground. One group comes from what is called a corm, a fibrous kind of thing. Dutch iris and crocus are examples of this. And then there are tubers, which is a starchy underground storage place for energy, which has eyes, which become little sprouts. A potato is a tuber, but anemones are a beautiful garden flower which grow from tubers. All of these can be planted in the same way as bulbs. My very favorites are daffodils and narcissus because they're so easy. They're hardy, and gophers don't like to eat them. Now, tulips are something else. A gopher considers a tulip bulb a great delicacy and will go quite a distance to eat one. So if you have gophers in your garden, give up on tulips unless you're prepared to plant them in little wire baskets under the earth. But gophers do not like daffodil bulbs, and they will avoid them. In fact, some gardeners put daffodil bulbs in between other plants to scare the gophers away. Now, planting time for bulbs is in the fall to get ready for spring blooming. You'll go to the nursery to buy new bulbs, and the best time to buy them is in September when they first come on the market, and you have the best choice. But then you need to put them in a cool place, a cool, dry place, to store them until planting time. It's not necessary to cool daffodils very much, but hyacinths and tulips and crocus almost have to be cooled in a refrigerator from 40 to 50 degrees for at least 6 weeks. This is because they are natives of cold climates, and where in their native country they were chilled underground, and they like the cold to convince them it is time to wake up in the spring. Here in Southern California, we plant our bulbs in November or December, just before the winter rains come, and in other climates they need to be planted just before frost time. Now, to choose a spot in the garden where you have some space and where there is good soil. The soil needs to be light enough to let water through. If you have a hard clay-like soil, it's best to work in some organic material like sawdust or composted leaves or old manure. In my case, I have a neighbor who keeps horses, and he piles the manure outside the fence and makes it available to anybody who wants it. Now, of course, fresh manure would burn bulbs or flowers, but after it's aged a while and gotten dry, it's almost like straw, and it's very easy to scatter several inches of manure on the soil and then just dig it in. The bulbs need to be buried with the point up, and they need to be covered with 4 to 6 inches of soil. The ideal depth varies with the species or the variety, but in general, you need to put about twice as much soil on top of them as the height of the bulb itself. That is, if the bulb is 2 inches high, it needs to be covered with 4 inches of dirt. Most flowers look best in groups or clumps rather than growing alone or in silly little lines like we sometimes put them. This is the way nature does it, and it's a good idea to follow nature. If you have a space in your garden 2 or 3 feet square, the easy way to plant bulbs there is to simply excavate the whole area down to the proper depth and then rake the bottom with a fork and scatter bulb fertilizer in and mix it with the soil and put perhaps ½ an inch of soil on top, and then place your bulbs in this area that you've cleared. Probably place them about 8 inches apart. This gives room for them to grow and to reproduce in other years, and means you won't have to dig them up for quite a number of years to pull them apart. Cover them halfway up with soil and then water thoroughly, and then put the rest of the soil in and water again. Now they need to be kept moist, so if the winter rains are late in coming, then you need to water this spot occasionally to keep it from drying out. If you're planting individual bulbs or wanted to put bulbs in between other plants, you can dig a hole for each one with a trowel or with a bulb planting device. Now there's a device on the market which I like very much. It's shaped kind of like a tomato soup can, except it's a little narrower at the bottom than at the top, sort of like a cone that's had the bottom point cut off. And at the top is fastened a handle. To plant a bulb with this, you simply push it down into moist earth, just like you were pushing a cookie cutter into dough, and it comes up with all the earth inside and leaves a beautiful hole just right for your bulb. You put some fertilizer in the bottom, cover it over with a little bit of soil, put the bulb in, and cover it up again. And then you water just as before. That's really just about all you have to do. You can wait for the winter, and when spring comes, you'll be delighted by the growth of all these green leaves and beautiful flowers, and your garden will be a total delight, and you won't have to work very hard at all.